let's look at this sacrament of the Eucharist on this journey of finding freedom from habitual sin. What encouragement would you give to young people?
Second Vatican Council said that the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith. It all comes back to the Eucharist. Everything flows from the Eucharist. It's the source, and everything flows back to the Eucharist. It's the summit. If I want to overcome habitual sin in my life, I have to stay close to Jesus in the Eucharist. I have to, because the Eucharist is Jesus. It is the sacrament of sacraments. It is the greatest gift that Jesus left his church as that primary way to fulfill that promise that he's going to be with us to the end of time. And there's so much grace in the sacrament of the Eucharist. In a worthy reception of Holy Communion, I'll often say after I receive communion, I'll say, remember, Brian, one communion can make you a saint. There's enough grace in one communion to make you a saint. If I just would be open enough to receive that grace and cooperate with that grace. So stay close to the Eucharist. How do we do that? Well, first and foremost, we go to Mass every Sunday. We go to Holy Days of Obligation. Every time there's a holy day, which is only just a couple times a year, there's a Holy Day of Obligation. But I go to Mass every Sunday. Sunday Mass should be a non-negotiable in my life. It's not a question of if I'm going to go to Mass this Sunday. The question is, when am I going to go? My whole week revolves around Sunday. Sunday is the most important day of the week because it's the day when we celebrate the Sunday liturgy, the Sunday Eucharist. It's got to be the anchor of my week, the celebration of the Eucharist on Sunday. We talked about confession last time and the importance of always receiving the Eucharist in the state of grace, of course, when I'm at Mass, to receive the Eucharist in a worthy state. And if I'm not in a worthy state, I still got to go to Mass on Sunday. And those are the times and those moments when I shouldn't receive communion at Mass, but make a spiritual communion and then get the confession as soon as you can so that you can come back to communion. Along with Sunday Mass, I highly encourage daily Mass. I know depending on people's schedules and work and school and location, sometimes daily Mass is more easier for some. I just can't encourage it enough. Even if can you get one extra Mass in during the week? Along with Sunday Mass, is there one time to go to daily Mass? Just once? Even just start there. It's like, I can't go the other 6 days of the week, so I won't go all. Well, again, start small, baby steps. Can I get to one extra Mass during the week to stay close to Jesus in the Eucharist? What's the famous expression you hear these days from oftentimes lukewarm Catholics, non-practicing Catholics? When you ask them about the Mass, they say the Mass is boring. Mass is boring. It's so boring. It's dry. Anyone who says the Mass is boring has no idea what he or she is talking about. They're bored because they don't know Jesus. They don't know the power of the Mass. They don't know the power of the Eucharist, the power of the Scriptures. And that's a sad thing. And so one of the great ways if I find Mass to be a boring thing, then you got to study. Do you really know what's happening at Mass? Because the more you study the Mass and what's actually happening there, the more you're going to come to appreciate that this is not boring. This is the greatest way to encounter Jesus Christ, the Son of God. There's a lot of great books out there on the Mass. Dr. Edward Shree's book, A Biblical Walk Through the Mass, is great. The Lamb's Supper is a famous book by Scott Hahn on the Eucharist. Tons and tons of great stuff on the Eucharist to help you come to understand the Mass more. One way, too, to help grow in your love for the Mass is to grow to love the liturgical seasons, the liturgical calendar that the Mass celebrates every day. Getting to know the feast days and the solemnities and memorials and the different seasons and the reasons the church celebrates these things. I live the liturgical calendar specifically by coming to Sunday Mass and daily Mass. It helps form me into a person that's always centered on the liturgy, always centered on the Eucharist. So especially, Sunday Mass, daily Mass, live in the liturgical seasons, live in liturgical life is a great way to grow in virtue and give you strength to overcome habitual sin.
Can you talk a little bit for someone that's not familiar with Eucharistic adoration, what that is, how that helps us, and just a little bit of approaching it reverently so that we are respectful of the sacrament?
So we believe that when the priest calls down the Holy Spirit on the bread and the wine at Mass, it's transformed into the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. Not just for the Mass, but Now, as long as that bread and wine is there, the accents of bread and wine are there, then Jesus is there. And so that's why when Mass after communion's over, we'll usually consume any of the precious blood still remaining, but we take the remaining hosts and we put them in a tabernacle. And that's Jesus present in that tabernacle because that's the Eucharist in there. And sometimes we'll even take one, a host out and we'll put it in this kind of sun-shaped gold thing, oftentimes called a monstrance. Monstrance comes from the Latin word monstrare, which means to show. And we show Jesus. We put him in the monstrance so that people can see the Blessed Sacrament. And so the church says anytime we spend time in prayer in front of the Blessed Sacrament, whether it be in a tabernacle or in a monstrance, that's called adoration. And it's a great way to pray. There's these extra graces that can come by simply just being in the presence of the Lord, in his sacramental, substantial presence in the Eucharist. Is praying at home in my living room a good thing? Absolutely. But I would encourage our listeners, especially for, again, I'm struggling with some kind of habitual sin, to make sure you're getting some time of prayer every week in front of the Blessed Sacrament. It's a great tradition in the church where people do a holy hour once a week. A holy hour is an expression of an hour of prayer in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. Again, either in a tabernacle or in a monstrance. Both are adoration. Both are equally good. It's not like one is better than the other. And take some time to pray. Sometimes you're asking about like postures and reverence. Anytime I'm in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament in a monstrance or a tabernacle, the church asks me to genuflect when I first come into that presence, to go down on my right knee. And then when I'm going to leave the presence of the Lord in the Eucharist, to genuflect again before leaving, as a way to show reverence that God is truly present in the most blessed sacrament before me. It's a great way to pray. A great analogy for me of adoration when I'm in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Jesus is the Son of God. This is one of the good things about English, that he is the S-O-N of God. What happens when you spend time in the presence of the S-U-N, the Son? If you spend time in the presence of the Son, you're changed. And if you spend a long time in front of the sun, you might get sunburned. Now,
Yeah.
you may not notice it in the very moment, but later on in the afternoon, you come back, you spend a couple hours at the beach, then you go back in for lunch or dinner or something. And then later in the evening, you're like, whoa, I'm a little red. I'm a little sore. Why is that? Because you were changed. Being in the presence of the S-U-N can change you, just like being in the presence of the S-O-N will change you.